All right, let's get going. Thank you so much for letting us have our lecture tonight, or sorry, our collab tonight instead of on Monday, because yeah, I wouldn't have got back in time, so that would have been a bit of a problem. I know I also said I was going to do a recording in terms of feedback for the assignment. I still am going to do that, but I'm going to speak to it as well now. Sorry, things have just been a little bit manic since Monday. So just to speak to the assignment before we get on to looking at Learning Unit 5, overall I was really, really happy with the assignments. The results were good overall. I think there was only one person who didn't pass type thing, and everyone was in the 60s and above mostly. So I was very happy with the academics evening in terms of what you guys produced. The one thing I will just say in terms of just general feedback is referencing on the whole was actually surprisingly good. There was still those few people that didn't reference well, but then just to say to you guys, just make sure within your paragraphs that you have multiple sources of information. I still had quite a few people that were basically repeating the textbook back to me, and obviously that's not ideal, because yeah, when you're repeating the textbook back to me, then what's the point? I can read the textbook. I'm glad you were surprised, or pleasantly surprised. You had not messed up at all. What else can I say? There was that was the other thing, was that I want you guys to think about finding balance between your theory and the application. I had a situation where a lot of people were like very theory heavy and not then giving me the application that helps me to see that you understand what the point of the essay actually is. So that's just something to be mindful of when it comes to your POE. It was the integration of multiple sources. What else? Oh, formal academic writing. Just make sure that you're writing with formal academic tone, not conversational. And just to make sure that you thinking about that formality that is needed within the essay. Everyone was very good with sticking to the essay length. So overall, I was very, very happy. It wasn't, the marks weren't horrendous that I need to like give you all a talking to or anything like that. I think the majority of you got the gist of the assignment, even if you felt like you didn't. The application was good overall. So any questions from you guys that you have to ask me? A camel, Lou. Always so helpful. Oh, thanks, Leah. Oh, sorry. It's been a long day. All right. So we're almost there. So now we've got to focus on the stuff for the POE. Yes, it's Hump Wednesday. I know. I'm just, yeah, like I said, it's been a very long day. So let's have a look. Any the things you're mentioning about academic, would you have put that in the comments in the assignment? Yes, Amanda, I would have. If it was a problem, I would have put their tone or be more formal with your writing. So yeah, if I didn't write it in yours, you would be fine. Oh, the one thing I will say, sorry, Amanda just made me think of something, is that a lot of you would have seen relevance or rel question mark. And what that is that a lot of you were giving me facts, but you weren't explaining the relevance of those facts. So you'd present the information, but then there would be no discussion or analysis or breakdown of why that information matters. So you would put a fact like the SABC was formed in 1936. Okay, great. Why does that matter? Why do I need to know that fact? Or you would say, for example, the SABC was used as a tool for propaganda. Okay, but how did that then influence the media landscape, or how does it shape what happened today? You need to make sure you follow up with the explanation to that bit of information that you've given. So always present the fact, and then follow up with an explanation as to why that fact is relevant, or why you felt that that bit of information needs to be present. If you don't give me that analysis or discussion part, you then are actually kind of only doing half the work. You're giving the theory, but you're not doing the deeper stuff. Okay, that was the one thing that I will pick up. Amanda, you did that didn't I didn't think of it because of your assignment. I just thought about your thing about the comments, and my brain started thinking about what had I commented on everyone's that might confuse people. So that's the relevance. So the majority was referencing relevance, um, and I would have told you if you completely went off track, or if your content wasn't pertinent to the discussion. Okay, so I tried to give any as much relevant feedback as possible, to help you guys for your POE. Okay. Any other questions before I get on to Learning Unit 5? I know some people have assignments due tomorrow and everything, so I don't want to waste anyone's time. Oh, well, there you go. Okay. This time, no, we hope for it never to appear. We never want the relevance statement. Okay. All right, let's look at Learning Unit 5 and what's important with Learning Unit 5. Okay, so I'm hoping some of you have been able to start working through this. For some of you, maybe not. If you haven't, breathe. We will get there. Okay, don't stress. Okay, but what is important with this particular learning unit is looking at the different views of ideology. Okay, specifically the neutral and critical views of ideology. So in Learning Unit 4, we looked at ideology and culture. Wait, hold on. Have we done Learning Unit 4, guys? Just sorry. I'm having a moment. Have I looked at Learning Unit 4 with you guys yet? I'm pulling up the pacer as we speak. I just can't remember if we've done hegemony. No, I didn't think so either. Okay, let's go back. Let's go back one. Sorry. As I started talking, I'm like, hold on. Something's missing. I didn't look at the, I looked at the what you should be doing this week, not what you should have done by now. Sorry. No, no, you guys are on track. It's me that is jumping the gun. So let me just take a few steps back. We're still looking at ideology, but I just was like, hold on. I don't remember discussing the basics with you lot. All right, so just while the notes are loading, we're still going to look at ideology, but we're also going to look at culture and how our cultures are represented within the media. So while the notes are loading, I want to ask you guys, how are South Africans portrayed within the global media? When you think of movies or series or anything where South Africans are meant to be represented, how are we shown? Yes, deepest, darkest Africa. Yes, so very rural. Yep, a lot of poverty. Think about how they do our accents. Riding elephants to school. Yes, primitive. Yes, okay, we are deepest, darkest considering, load shedding and all. Yes, always with a heavy Afrikaans accent. A really bad Afrikaans accent always. Okay. Yes, so we've got that here's with our sport. So, we're not portrayed in the most positive manner. We are always portrayed almost less than, being quite backward, and also very stereotypical. Like the fact that most South Africans either have a very thick Afrikaner accent if they're white, or if you black, then you've got to have like a very like rural strong Zulu accent or Xhosa accent. It's very stereotypical and very black and white, where what we know is that is not how South Africa is actually seen within the world. Yes, and we wear tribal clothes. And, our culture is the African culture is looked down upon. Yes, animals roaming the street, which if you live in what Richards Bay, you have hippos, so I guess, fair, fair. Um, Go to school in lions. Yeah, that's a great one. So yeah, there we go, Lou. So you get the hippos wandering around, or wombling around is what I was going to say. Um, but what we've got to think about is how cultures are represented within our media. So in most instances, as a kid in the journey thought traveled to school on a line. Yep. And then when you're busy talking to someone online and they go, but how are you talking to me? You don't have you don't have electricity. This is before load shedding, but you don't have the internet. You don't live in a normal house. Um, no, do you have mobile phones? It's very blinkered, their view of what South Africans actually are. Um, oh wow, that's a new one, Almas. Wow. So yeah, so we're not seen in the most positive light, but the reality is we know that our culture and who we are as a South African people is very, very different to how the rest of the world sees us. We see our value, we see the diversity, we know that, we fought very hard for that. So we have to think about the media and media representation and what culture actually is. So, what culture is ideas, customs, social behavior of a group of people. So, we might have a South African culture, but then you might also have a Western culture or a more European culture, or you might have an African culture, or Xhosa, or Zulu, or Sotho, or whatever it may be. It's that our culture has an influence to define who we are and how we see the world. And our media is the generalized representation of the various cultures around the world. But then if we think about things like when we think Christmas and Christmas movies, what do we picture? What is a Christmas movie all about? Snow, winter wonderland, stereotypical American perception. All right. When we think of the yes, Michael Bublé, yeah, and a bit of Mariah thrown in there, for high notes. And what we have to think about is how different cultures are perceived around the world. So, for example, the UK and the US are seen as very forward, even though China and Japan in that lead in terms of technology in that, they're still seen almost less than because they have an Eastern approach. Um, yeah, Amanda, that for a lot of South African kids and Australian kids and all that, we question why we don't get snow. It doesn't make sense because that is what is seen within the media, and it kind of influences us in terms of what we see as being important or not, and so on. So the more the media portrays a particular culture or a particular way of life, the more we see that way of life as more important than our own. All right. So we have to think about these representations. So just going to the next slide. Which one is it? This one. Okay. So when we think about the media and our culture and how it's interpreted, it gets broken down into two different things that we need to think about. And this is what's important for you guys in terms of this learning unit is the concepts of high, popular, and mass culture, which I'll go through in a minute, but then also the idea that media is a reflection or portrayal of culture. So now, why was Black Panther a big deal within the media landscape, do you think, for Africa as well as people of color? Santa's reindeers get eaten by the lions. Yeah, and that's why we don't get snow or gifts. Oh, that's so funny. That's such a cool thing. Never thought of that. Okay. So it was a tech forward representation of Africa, yes. Gave a lot of exposure to our cultures. Okay. So it was for what the first time really that there was a true representation of African cultures in a very positive and strong way. And besides one or two characters such as Chad Boseman, rest in peace, the characters, the supporting characters were from Africa. And even though the two lead guys are from America, they still were representing people of color. Yes, very strong African women. Exactly. And when we look at when they, if we think of about Black Panther, when they fly into Wakanda and you see the South African you see, well, Lesotho and the SA Drakensberg, that scene is filmed in the Lesotho Highlands. Part of the dialect within the film is based on Xhosa and all this kind of thing. It was the first time where a big portion of the population of our world that normally is not represented finally was represented not as a minority, but as the main focus of the actual films. Yes, loyal, brave, and cultured. I love that. And if you think of even like the fight scene between the two guys, one or two of the tribes are wearing Basotho blankets as part of their attire, and it was the fact that it was actually showing us or showing Africa as not being this backward, rural, dingy, dark, nothingness. It was showing it as actually this vibrant place full of life, which we know it to be. So it was just one of those first moments that we saw real, true representation. And the reality is that most of our media only shows or reflects a very small portion of society. And so when we have films like Black Panther and Encanto and all those kinds of films, and we start to have proper representation, even with what's the one with the I want to say Coco, the where they're representing Day of the Dead. It is Coco. Yes. Okay, I haven't lost my mind completely. It's all these films that are trying to show the other side. So it's basically trying to start reflecting those minorities that are normally marginalized. Yes, Moana, also very popular one. Um, and it's that people are starting to say more representation needs to happen, that these mass budget films need to be more inclusive of society as a whole. So I just also want to speak to this high popular mass culture, just so you guys understand the difference. So your high culture, the best way for me to describe it is Gossip Girl. Like when you think of Gossip Girl, Upper East Side, the money, okay, the snooty elite, or those that live in Chelsea in the UK and all those, Wimbledon and all the expensive fancy places. It's the elite of society. The people that go watch the ballet and the opera and go to art exhibitions and openings. Yes, the rich and the extra, 100%. Yes, we go with opera. It's all about the hoity-toity of society. Okay, the 1% of the 1%. And our high culture is generally what influences our popular culture and our mass culture eventually. So the high culture is what the elites deem to be of importance. So at the moment, there's New York Fashion Week, and that is a representation of high culture because these designers, set the season for what is going to be of importance in terms of fashion, and then that's all the fashion magazines, and then the films, and on and on and on. So that one thing that would be seen as, you know, a small event or not that important actually has repercussions throughout society. And what often happens, what is considered high culture, then gets almost dumbed down or simplified and then becomes popular culture. So it is not of the elite. They will see if something becomes pop culture, they then say, oh, this is too common. But it is the dominant ideas or tastes of society. So, like at the moment now, with this resurgence of 90s fashion and 2000 fashion, and then I see these TikTok people that go, oh, it's from early 2000s, it's vintage, and I want to slap them sideways. Yes, this Y2K resurgence, and I'm going, didn't think I'd already lived through it twice. Um, but it's that we, this popular culture is what then we see as being important within our everyday. So what books are fashionable, what music is of the now, what fashion there is, everything that is seen or enjoyed by the masses or by the general public as your pop culture. And then your mass culture is then when it goes even bigger and en masse. So I think your Comic Cons, your big book conventions, it's where it's reaching a mass of people. And the same with the popular, and that mass culture can come from high culture. Generally, our mass culture is what is deemed acceptable on a global platform. Okay. Do those three make sense? Okay. Awesome. Okay. Then the other thing I want you guys to be aware of when you're working through this particular stuff is the concepts of, so ideology, obviously being the ideals, the beliefs, the viewpoints, the norms within society. But one step further than that, one step further than ideology is the concept of hegemony. And what this is that there is always one dominant group of people that push their viewpoints on the rest of the world. So, again, like we see within the film industry being dominated by the American mindset or the framing, the hegemony is the ideology, yes, of Hollywood, of the American dream, the American lifestyle. So that is then pushed onto us. So their ideology becomes the hegemony, which then is then pushed onto the rest of us, and then we follow suit with their ideology. So it's important for you guys to understand that there's ideology, which you guys are quite familiar with. So I'm just going to go to this slide. Um, Ideology is, you know, what your views, your beliefs, your ideals are. And that generally is influenced by your religion, your viewpoints, and that is hegemony a bad thing. It depends. So hegemony is a bad thing if it means the minorities are not heard. So yes, American centric, I like that. So hegemony is bad in that it kind of pushes those less dominant ideologies aside. And it means that what happens is a lot of people then will ignore their own ideologies and their own cultures and way of life in favor of the hegemony. And if that hegemony is driven by money and power and what have you, that's always seen as a bad thing because generally the people's views are for those who have power, financial or societal. Um, so I'm just seeing what Alma said. It disregards ideologies to fit the norm. Yes. Okay. So the problem with hegemony is that, you know, it means we become almost just all one and the same. Okay. So think of like the Matrix, where everyone's just, you know, going through with everything, and then, you know, these people realize it's all a facade and what have you. So it's just we have to be cognizant of people's ideologies. It doesn't necessarily mean you have to agree with them. but you need to be respectful of them. And it is all about thinking about how our ideologies can complement one another, and also so that we're aware of what's going on, so that we don't deliberately cause harm unnecessarily with our media, such as Burger King here pushing the boundaries of what people would be comfortable with. That's why I put that picture in there, because this advert is deliberately going to offend people, and that's not what should be done. Yeah, just a little sus. Okay. The other thing that I want you guys to be aware of is polysemy. So it's where we have a particular word or phrase or something that has multiple meanings. So ogres are like onions. Okay. Um, yeah. Okay, then that would be fun. Um, so ogres are like onions, and donkey says they stink, and ogre says no layers. For those who don't know Shrek, and if you don't, go watch it. Okay. Yes, they have layers. All right. So it's the same thing. So have a break, have a Kit Kat. They're meaning breaking the Kit Kat, but also the break you get from sitting and eating the chocolate. Same kind of idea. Um, Second to last thing I wanted you guys to be aware of is intertextuality. And this one I just like for you guys with those who are doing English. Um, so who are they referring to in this McDonald's ad? To be or not to be? What's the lynch? Shakespeare. Okay. Good, good. Just checking that you're paying attention. Okay. Yes. Id, ego, super ego. And so Hamlet, to be or not to be, that is the question. But that little thought pops up in between. What's for lunch? But this only works if you know Shakespeare. So this could be this advert could be up in a school, could be by Shakespeare's home and all that in the UK. But we have to have an understanding of the primary text for it to make sense. Okay, so that was the other thing. And then lastly, the reason I'm bringing this one up is because it is part of your POE, that we have different forms of cultural expression. And the one that I just want to focus on is sport. Okay. How is sport seen within our country? Yep. Champions of rugby, yes. Pad soccer, 100%. So we sport, would you consider it a unifying um, thing within our South African culture? Okay. So it is. It's loved within our country. Um, we all come together. Look at us now with the World Cup and everything. We see sport as a way to unify us not only within our own country, but also look at with the World Cup again on a global platform. Can't have a braai without a little sport and everyone together. Okay. Yes, we all started enjoying soccer during the World Cup as well. It's that always we look at sport and how it unifies us and brings us together, so that we are able to be a country that puts all our other differences and our different aspects aside for that time period. For example, also like with music, if we think about when Jerusalem came out and everyone was jamming to it around the world, okay, it just showed us how we could be unified based on a random song. And then, so if going back to the sport, look that even when a sports team is knocked out of the World Cup, what the other countries do is they end up backing other teams that are still going within the World Cup. So it's that we have this moment where our culture is shared, we're unified, and we're able to come together, whether it be for a brief time period, whether it be like now for a season with the World Cup, or when it's football season or rugby season or whatever. It's that we have to think about how sport can be used as a tool to unify and help us have a shared understanding of a specific culture. And in this case, the culture of sport and how it is integral in, for us as South Africa, it is integral in who we are as a people. Okay, does that make sense, guys? Awesome. Okay. So the one thing I will say to you guys, to prep for the POE, start looking up Banyana Banyana for those who aren't familiar with them. Okay, our women's soccer team. Start looking into who they are, look at how they're represented in the media, South African media or international media, and start just getting to know them a bit, because it's going to stand you in good stead when we start going through our POE. Does that make sense to everyone? Okay. Because yeah, it is one of the questions of the POE. Okay. Because the reality is, I know not a lot of people know them well unless they are into soccer. So that will help you quite a bit. All right. Any other questions with regards to this learning unit, guys? Nope. Okay. Any questions at all? Okay. Then that's us for tonight. That's all we needed to go through and what you need to be aware of for the POE. Can we touch on the report requirement? Why? Oh, I know, Lou. I know. That's our in our next lecture, our next collab. I'll speak to that as well. Yeah, it is true, Almas. So yeah, I will speak to the report and everything in our next one. I just wanted to give your brains a little break because I know you've been all doing comms this week and everything, and some of you've got not psych due tomorrow and everything. Well, you know what? At least you know the format. Oh, there you go. Psych on Friday. I just couldn't remember if it was Thursday or Friday. Okay.